get into today's show, we're talking about these two players only. Now, you don't have to actually only keep one. But in a hypothetical scenario in which the Cowboys say, help me, I'm poor, which one would you keep if you could only keep one of them? D for Dak Prescott, M for Micah Parsons. Friend of the Cowboys Report, Charles Haley, you can wind back the clock and find our interview with him, spoke about Dak Prescott and his future with the Cowboys and what Dallas needs to do. And his comments on Kay Adams' show have been taken not just out of context, they've been flat out wrongly interpreted. All right? Here's what Charles said. And it was the first sentence that everyone stopped after. And it's frankly disingenuous reporting by other NFL outlets. Trade Dak. Just put him up for trade. Guess what? Every team in the league would be after him. Every team in the league. Dak is a winner. Dak is a great person and a great leader. I know him. I go up there, meaning the facility, all the time. Haley didn't actually mean try to trade away Dak Prescott. He literally meant the opposite of that. Now, there's some hyperbole in there because not every team in the league would trade for Dak Prescott, obviously. But I think we are smart enough and media literate enough to know what he actually meant. It's a, you know what, trade Dak and see what happens. It's an F around and find out claim. And frankly, that is a valid angle. That's not to say the other angle isn't valid. We'll come back to that too on today's show. Heck, Haley even said, how do you not keep Lamb and Dak together? To be quite honest, and I've noticed this more and more as of late, I think media literacy, not from you guys watching, but from even other media outlets, is in the gutter. And we have no idea how to interpret what's actually being said, and we just choose to interpret it how we want to interpret it, whether to be happy or be angry over it. Haley did not advocate to trade Dak Prescott. You have to listen to the conversations and not just read about it on a tweet. You have to actually listen to it. And it's very clear he was advocating for Dak. Now, you don't have to agree with that. That is perfectly fine. So this is the pinned comment on today's show. As long as we're nice to each other in the comments. It's the only thing I ask for in this. All I'm asking for. I'll save the rest of the spiel for later. Do you want Dak Prescott on the Cowboys? A for yes or B for no? Now, when we have this conversation, I want to start it in the proper context. Otherwise, we can't have a real conversation about it. Dak's a top 10 franchise QB. Now, you can argue there's probably more than 10 top 10 caliber quarterbacks. That's totally fine too. But we cannot sit there and say, well, Dak's actually bad. That's not true. And it's not even an opinion. It's just wrong. It is perfectly fine to say you need more. It is very valid to argue, hey, maybe it's not good enough, or you don't want to pay what the contract is. That's valid. Just don't sit there and tell me, yeah, he's, as I've seen other outlets say, he's a bottom 10 quarterback. No, you're stupid. I'm sorry. You're just not right. I'm not going to hold back on that one. Look, the quarterback contract market is the market. I know there's sticker shock. It's a lot of money. You got two options. Either you pay the quarterback market rate like all the other teams are, or you just don't play altogether. You can't try to have your cake and eat it too. I truly do believe that a team can win a title with Dak Prescott. Look at some of these other Super Bowl winning QBs. Now, that's not to excuse some of his playoff performances. It's a very valid criticism of him and many quarterbacks out there. It's hard to win a championship. It is also very fair to question if this team can win a Super Bowl with this quarterback at this upcoming contract. Can this team, are they even willing to build the right roster around him? Are they set up in a way where they can function with it? I don't know if they are. In some ways, I think Stafford is a more physically talented quarterback than Dak Prescott is. I think there are some similarities there. The Lions weren't winning anything. And then he goes to the Rams and wins a Super Bowl. That might have been a team thing more than a quarterback thing. And I have made this point before, and I will make it again. The Cowboys have to decide what their damn plan is. Because I don't know if there is one. There's upside and downside to whatever you do with Dak Prescott. Let's say you want to move on, right? Hey, it's cheaper. You can maybe find a better quarterback. That is within the range of outcomes, right? The downside is you no longer have a top 10 quarterback and you get stuck in quarterback purgatory or hell. You can go look at what the Giants are doing, what the Commanders are doing. Maybe Jaden Daniels is the guy. Be a long time coming for him. Daniel Jones is not it. The Giants paid him like he was because they were so desperate for it. Cowboys have to make a decision. That they have to decide. And frankly, they should have decided months ago. I think you got to decide before the season is here. And whatever you decide, if you want to extend Dak Prescott, set up your 3, 4, 5, whatever year is window while he's still in his prime, okay, I'll support that. But I will advocate for you to do the things that you need to do because he is not going to single-handedly carry you. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson has been even worse in the playoffs, but Dak's not even Lamar. Or if you want to rebuild, fine. But I will advocate for you to do the right things. And that means selling players and trading them away and tanking and getting a top 5 pick to spend on a QB that you haven't spent since the 1990s. You got to pick one side of the extreme at that point. And it is the Cowboys Report, after all. And that my allegiance is to the Cowboys Report, not to anything else. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/CowboysTV. Now, this conversation between Bobby Belt, friend of the show, and Bryan Broaddus on the Love of the Star podcast, I think was really insightful and maybe a little bit worrisome as well as it relates to Micah Parsons. Here were the main points made, and I would recommend you check out the full video, again, to listen to the conversation yourself. Number one, I want to emphasize this: super good player, great player, incredibly gifted player. I think sometimes in the Micah Parsons conversation, because we all know he's great, anything that isn't perfect gets over-amplified. It's kind of like when we're talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. and you say, he's got to work on that. We kind of gloss over all the great stuff he does because he is so good already. That's the assumed angle. There's already the assumption of greatness for Micah. But it's that he wants to play, maybe not so much study. There are some concerns in the organization about him and some fears of paying him. So do you worry about paying Micah Parsons and how things could go after he gets a big fat contract, how the roster is built around him? Y for yes, N for no. Here's what Bryan Broaddus said, and then we'll get to a lot of quotes here, so bear with me. I think Micah Parsons hates school football. He's not interested in your OTAs or mini camps. He's interested in playing football, which is cool. I think he has a real issue with that classroom aspect of things. There's things that he shows in these videos of him working out and working at various places, working with other people. I think they would like to have him in the building, working with his teammates, working with the wait staff that they have here. Look, at least in terms of him being in the building, yeah, I want him at OTAs and minicamp. He doesn't need it necessarily, but would help explain the OTA absence. I think that stuff is valuable, though. In some ways, to a more extreme example, because, Micah is, if we'll stick with golf comparisons here, if comparing me as a golfer to him, it's like Tiger Woods versus me. I'm going to get smoked, right? I don't like going to the driving range as a golfer. I don't like the practice. I just want to play. I think that's kind of where Micah's at. You don't want to practice. He didn't want to, do super hardcore study stuff. He just wants to go play. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's part of what I consider as ultra-competitive traits. Broaddus also said this: I think there's maybe with some things with preparation that they're not too happy with, but that goes back to classroom football. I don't think Micah Parsons wants to particularly sit down and learn how to be an off-ball linebacker. I think Micah Parsons has a God-given talent to put his hand in the dirt and rush the passer. That's what I think he wants to do more than anything else in the world. Micah Parsons doesn't want to do that. Does he want to sit down and go through 5-6 games trying to figure out tendencies? So there might be some people that like that preparation, whether it's classroom preparation, weight room preparation, That one's more negative. Now, I will say, I am unconcerned with any potential weight room preparation stuff. He's in great shape. You can look at a player and know that. I think my concern is that comment is going to be taken more of he doesn't want to work. And that's how that whole conversation is going to end up being taken. Which I don't know if that's fully what it is. It's not the first time that accusation has appeared. There's been different arguments that, he doesn't want to work to be an off-ball linebacker because there's a lot more that goes on from a pre-snap perspective and knowing those tendencies versus, do you even want him at off-ball linebacker? Look, you can give him some reps there. Sure. I will say this part too. I don't want to overstate this. I think being an impact edge is way more important than being an impact off-ball linebacker. And the contracts reflect that in football. So I'm not as concerned as maybe you could be with that conversation. Also from Broaddus, I think Micah has a God-given talent, and he is really good at rushing the passer. But everything else that goes along with it, I think he wants to do it his way, and that rubs people the wrong way. This is where I actually start to get worried for 2024. Because I've mentioned this kind of stuff before. There's a level of BS, whether this is BS or not, but just in general, that you will put up with for certain players and stuff you will not put up with. Jordan Addison getting a DUI for the Minnesota Vikings, what the hell are you doing? But he's not going to get cut. He's a first-round pick. If the Vikings undrafted free agent rookie wide receiver got a DUI, guess what? He's getting cut. There's different standards, different rules for different players. That is how this works. Now, Mike Zimmer wants to do it his way too. And there is some potential for butting of the heads there with how do I want to operate? How do you want to operate? Micah straight up said that Zimmer hasn't had a Micah before. That's kind of not true. He had DeMarcus Ware. So, red flags going off in my head. Like, that is a concern. And my concern here, if for the overall 2024, it's the me versus the we. We're not there yet. How does this team handle adversity? You saw it in 2019 when it all went to shit after a great start. That's going to be a big factor this season. Now, Bobby Belt agreed with pretty much all of what Broaddus said, added this part too. I think at times there is a freelance element to Parsons' game as well that has frustrated some people and leads to busts specifically in the run game. I think there's still a little bit of Micah wanting to make every play, and it's a competitive, positive trait, but in a lot of ways, it's a double-edged sword. You love it in one aspect in the other area, and it can lead to some busts sometimes because you're not working as a cohesive unit because you're trying to do something that you weren't designed to do right. And then there are other times where he makes the play and everyone's happy in that moment. And that's stuff you'll typically live with because he makes a bunch of plays for you. Go back to the Hard Knocks clip that Bobby mentioned too, where Van Der Esch said you got to know which play is yours to make. And that comes with more reps and more learning, and you're playing against better players. You can't make every play maybe the way you were able to in high school and college and everything. But he is impactful. I do want to emphasize that part. So how many sacks for Micah this year? Sound off for me in the comments. Bobby said this as well, mentioning don't take it as any of the off-the-field legal issues that Zeke had, but said I think there's a maturing process they're still going through with him that's very similar to the one they went through with Ezekiel Elliott years ago, where it's just a guy who has his heart in the right place a lot of times, has a zeal for a game, and has all these different traits that are so great, but you're all still going, yeah, but you got to bring it along a little bit here. Let's act more like a pro here. Now, I interpret that as he's a young guy. It's general youth, maturity, or immaturity. And it should come with more time. But it's not fully there yet. And that's frankly okay. You can think back to Penei Sewell coming out of the draft, and there were, he's got character concerns. People are like, well, wait, what are the character concerns, Albert Breer? And he goes, he's young. Was that really a character concern? Or is he just young? That's kind of the way I interpret that more, because as Bobby says, it comes from a good spot. Now, this is the one that I think is maybe one of the more controversial parts, too, from Broaddus. There's people in the organization that fear him paying this money. Fear. That's the case. There's going to be these questions just like everything that we just walked through. Look, this is something that Brian and Bobby and I think most of you agree with. Micah is one of the best in the game. He is a very special football player. He is ultra competitive. And I don't mean any of this to be viewed as an overly negative thing, because it doesn't mean that Micah Parsons is a perfect football player. Nobody is. I think almost all of this comes from You can be more. Micah Parsons is an all-pro caliber player. He is on a Hall of Fame career arc through only 3 seasons, a lot of football to be played. I don't think any of us would believe the Cowboys and Micah Parsons have been maximized yet. How do you get the most out of him? And how do you get him, a young kid who's got the world as his oyster, who has been super impactful, has already made one hell of a start to his football career, how do you get him to fully identify with, I can be even better, I can be more? I think that's some of the leadership stuff that has been bandied about a lot this offseason. The standard and expectations are super high. Micah Parsons can have his B or C game and be better than 80% of football players ever to play the game. He is that one-of-one talent. How do you not just make him have his A game every day? How do you not just make him the defensive player of the year? How do you put him in the Aaron Donald, J.J. Watt category of this guy's a no-doubt first ballot Hall of Famer, this guy's going to be an all-decade team player? Micah's not there yet, but he has the ability to. So I think all this stuff comes from, not trying to tear him down and be like, he's bad, but more of how do we make him into a truly generational football player?